Hello, welcome to your academy. At your academy, we have been dealing with the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. And today in this lecture, we will deal with the last portrait from the general prologue, and that is the portrait of the pardoner. So we have delivered lectures on all the portraits from the general prologue. Now talking about pardoner, he is placed by Geoffrey Chaucer at the very end of the general prologue. The first character would be the character of knight, and the last character is the character of pardoner. Now when we go through these two particular portraits, we find a great contrast between the two. So some of the critics would tell you that this contrast that we find in the portrait of the knight and in the portrait of the pardoner is made or developed by Chaucer deliberately, because knight is an epitome of honor, dignity, chivalry, truth. Every good characteristic, every good trait is associated with the knight, and every bad trait is associated with the pardoner. Pardoner would also be one who is associated with the church, one who pardons. So he is related to the church, he is a member of the church, but he is an epitome of evil, in contrast to the righteousness, in contrast to the good and gentleness of the knight. So let's take up the portrait of the pardoner and find out how did pardoner appear to the Geoffrey Chaucer. With him there rode a gentle pardoner of Roncesvalles, his friend and his compeer. Now with him there journeyed a pardoner. Who is this him? It is Summoner. You know, the earlier portrait was of the Summoner, so pardoner would be a friend of Summoner. So he belongs to Roncesvalles. Now this Roncesvalles is name of an establishment or of an organization, of a building which is associated with church, and which for that matter, to be very particular, with Saint Augustine's fundamentals, or those who believe in the ideals of Saint Augustine's. And it was believed that this establishment, this organization was associated for sanctioning dubious pardons, for sanctioning unjust pardons. So he belonged to this particular place. The first relation, the first affiliation that Chaucer makes of the pardon is with a company, with an establishment which has not a good reputation. So this would later build the character of the pardoner with a bad reputation, which I said earlier would be an epitome of evil, would be devilish, would be a bad man. And he is a friend and compeer of whom? Parson. Parson was not of Parson, but of Summoner, and Summoner was also not a good man, good character. Straight from the court of Rome had journeyed he, loudly he sang, "Come hither, love to me." Now from where had he come? He had come from the court of Rome. Now Rome at that time was a great civilization, was well educated civilization. Maybe most of these court cases or significant court cases may be taking place in Rome. So he had come from that, and now he was going to the pilgrimage to Canterbury, but he would sing loudly, "Come love to me. Come hither, love to me." Now this one phrase, which is kept in inverted commas by Geoffrey Chaucer, had given sexual implication. There are some critics who would say that this guy pardoner was gay kind of a fellow, that he would indulge in sexual activities, but there are not many people who would end up justifying this argument. And some people, some critics for that matter, also believed that pardoner had sexual relationships with Summoner. However, again, as I said, that these would not be established later, such arguments won't be established. But this one phrase, "Come hither, love to me," some of the critics believe that this signifies the vulgarity or that sexual attitude or gay attitude of partner. So you must remember that there are not many characters, that he is the only character who is suspicious about his sexuality or suspicious about his sexual acts. Joining with a burden round was never horn of half so great a sound. Now again, these two statements, that when he would call this statement, come hither love to me, the only person who would adhere or agree or accept this offer was summoner. Now again, these two verses also would suggest that maybe that there is this sexual relationship between summoner or partner, that there are some indications, some implications, which as I said earlier, as we go to the Canterbury Tales, as we read Canterbury Tales, there are not too many references, too many allusions about it, but these 2, 3, 4 verses here have got some suggestions of that nature. This pardoner had hair as yellow as wax, but lank it hung as does a strike of flax. Now he is telling you about the description. He is the last character, 29th, and we have been reading the characters from Miller onwards. Miller, Manciple, Reeve, Summoner. Now all these 4 characters which we have already dealt, we know that the physical description of those characters was not given as good by Geoffrey Chaucer. Miller was a very weird kind of a fellow, Manciple was bad looking, Reeve was ill, bad looking, and so was the Summoner. And so is the pardoner. Now look at how his hair is. It's like wax, and it lengths, it hung like a flax. Now this flax is, I am showing you this image of this flax. It's basically a reference to a herb, which is long in and thin in nature. So you can make out that how did his hair look like. One thing is clear, that he had long hair on his head and they were yellow. Now yellow long hair, I don't know if I have seen a human being with yellow hairs. In wisps hung down such locks as he had on head, and with them he his shoulders overspread. Wisps is, pieces of hair put together. This is usually done by the females in the olden days, or in contemporary times. Wisps made of the hair. These West Indian cricketers would do such kind of things. Chris Gayle often does that, and others also do. They make wisps of these hair, and he had done that, and then he had spread those wisps on those locks on his shoulders. So he had long hair, he had yellow hair, he had strange kind of hair. The appearance of this man pardoner does not look attractive at all, but thin they dropped and stringy one by one, but as to hood, for support of it he had none. But these wisps, these curls of hair, they were thin and they spread one by one, so they would make him look more ugly. And so far as his hood is concerned, his coat is concerned, that would support these wisps, these locks, these curls, there was none. So he was not also wearing the best kind of clothes, though it was packed in wallet all the while. It seemed to him he went in latest style. Now again he's referring to his hairstyle. He made these styles such that he believed that he is going with the trend. These are not obsolete kind of fashions. These are not old fashions. These are not outdated fashions. He believed, though it he looked as a joker kind of a fellow, as a fellow on which people would laugh and would tell him, what have you made of yourself, you fool. But he did not believe like that. He thought that that was the trend. He was rather a trend setter, doing things way differently than perhaps the others would. De Shelwood, save for cap, his head all bare, as shiny eyes he had as has a hair. Now De Shelwood is used for a person who is nude, who does not have too many clothes. This is a reference to the nudity of this guy Pardon. Now this nudity is again associated with sexuality. So we would get again that allusion, that reference to the sexuality of him. Secondly, we would say that he has nothing except a cap on his head and his eyes were shiny as the eyes of hare. Now this is simile where he is comparing his eyes with the eyes of the hare. I have not mentioned the use of technical devices or rhetorical devices that much in these lectures, though I would have, but at some other time I would take time to tell you about the rhetoric devices that Geoffrey Chaucer has used. He had a fine Veronica sewed to cap, his wallet lay before him in his lap. Veronica is also a name of the girl, and Veronica is also a herb which has got flowers of white, pink and other colors. So here in this context, Veronica would mean that herb, those flowers of different colors. He had he has stitched with his cap, and he was also having his wallet which laid on in his lap. Wallet would mean a bag or anything that he carried with himself, which must have had some important documents or things that he is carrying with himself. Stuffed full of pardons brought from room, all hot, a voice he had that bleated like a goat. Now hot got, I can't read it like that, but Geoffrey Chaucer perhaps had rhymed hot with goat. So what his wallet contained, it contains the pardons which he had brought from room, the opinions which he had brought from the rooms, and he sounded like goat. When he spoke, he was not having the best of the voices, best of the throats, but when he would speak, as if he would bleat like the goat does, he would sound like that of the goat. Now again, as I said, that these last 5 characters that Chaucer has brought to us, he does not tell even a single good thing about them, whether it is about their dress, whether it is about their physical experience, physical appearance, or it is about their conduct or character. No beard had he, nor ever should he have, for smooth his face as he had just had a shave. So he had no beard on his face. And not only this, Geoffrey Chaucer says he would never have it. Now this thing that he would never have a beard is again giving us that implication of sexuality. And secondly, he looked such, his face was so smooth as if he had been shaved just now. Now, as I am telling you, what Geoffrey Chaucer is telling us, he is making a portrait of this Pardner such as if he looks like a gay, a homosexual, and he is time and again making indirect propositions, indirect arguments about the sexuality of Pardner. I think he was a gelding or a mare, but in his craft from Berwick unto Ware was no such Pardner in any place, for in his bag he had a pillow case. Gelding and mare, these are the horses. Now perhaps he is referring to the horses that he was carrying with him, whether these are 2 different species or variety of horses, but he was carrying either a mare or a gelding. But if I tell you about his craft as a Pardner, there was none from Berwick to Ware. Now these Berwick and Ware are the name of 2 places which are far away from each other. So he was not a Pardner of these places, but he is telling us, he is suggesting that there was no Pardner as good as him. Now again, this is ironical, a statement. He was not a good Pardner, but he is making a satirical and ironical statement here that you will not find in entire England a better Pardner than him. And in his bag there was also a pillowcase. Now I have read these 4 verses together, and these 4 verses tell us different stories. 3 tell us same thing, that he was the best of the Pardner that you can have in England, and the last one gives us more information about him, that he was also carrying a pillowcase with him, the which he said was our true lady's wheel. He said he had a piece of the very sail that good Saint Peter had, what time he went upon the sea till Jesus changed his bent. And this pillowcase, which he carried, he told that it was the best pillowcase that you can have or you can carry with himself. And then he also told us about a sail of a ship which was once ridden by Saint Peter. Now this Saint Peter was a companion of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. We are told that there were 12 companions of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and one of the companion was Saint Peter. And Saint Peter once went on the boat, on the ship, and the ship on which he rode, that is Saint Peter, some piece or some part of that ship is with the partner. Now Geoffrey Chaucer is telling us here, again ironically, this is not the best thing that he can tell us about a partner, or he truly owns it or not, is very difficult, because the way we have so far known the portrait of the partner, he must not have any religious thing or any good thing with him. He had a Latin cross set full of stones, and in bottle he had some pig's bones. Now this Latin is an object, is a product which is made of brass for that matter, and he carried that thing with him, and in this particular metallic thing were put stones, and he was also carrying a bottle with him in which there were the bones of the swine. Now these two things fit the character of the pardon, but the earlier one didn't. The sail of the boat which Saint Peter for that matter rode does not feel fit or go fit with the character of the partner. But the second one, that he was carrying a Latin with stones and a bottle with the bones of the swine, fits the character of the partner. But with these relics, when he came upon some simple parson, then this paragon in that one day more money stood to gain than the poor dupe in 2 months could attain. With these relics, which relics? The relic of the sail, of the Latin, and of the bones of the swine which he is carrying. And whenever there came a time in his life with these things that he is having, it could make the best of the partner. It could make him a paragon, a paramount, a best human being, and would help him to earn more money, more profit than the poor parsons and poor friars and poor monks. It would take them, particularly those of the parsons, it would take parson 2 months to earn as much as this partner earns in a day because of these relics. So again, the suggestion here is that this partner is not a learned man. He's not the one like parson who would study the Bible, study the Gospels and teach them. No, he keeps relics with him and earns money by showing people these relics. Look at me, I am having the sail of the ship which was ridden by whom? Saint Peter. Who was the Saint Peter? Saint Peter was the companion of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. So people get impressed. And thus with flattery and such like japes, he made the parsons and the rest his apes. Now again, there is a contrast of partner made with the parson. Now remember the character of parson. He is the only portrait, only character related to church and who is good, about whom Chaucer tells us good. And he says that with such like stuff, with such like relics and such like jokes, japes means practical jokes, he could make fun of the parsons. Parson, it would take parson 2 months, 3 months, 4 months to earn the amount of profit that partner would earn in just a day. But yet, to tell the whole truth, at the last, he was in church, a fine ecclesiast. Well could he read a lesson or a story, but best of all, he sang an offertory. Now let me tell you the truth at the last. Now what I was telling up till now perhaps weren't right things. But again, the fact is that what he was telling was right. But again, he is making that ironical statement here. Now I'll tell you the truth at the last. He was related to the church, and for that matter, the ecclesiast. Now this ecclesiast is again is also a name of the book of the Bible, a chapter of the Bible, and is also related to the Greeks. So he would maybe a member of that group who are learned in Greeks, or who know Greek for that matter, or who believe the principle of this ecclesiastical order or book, which is there which is one of the books or chapters in the Bible. And he could also read lessons or stories from the Bible. The suggestion is such, but the best thing that he can do is that he can sing an offertory. Now, what is this offertory? This is a song which is usually sung, or words which are usually spoken when people collect money or profit in religious gatherings. So the best thing that the partner could do was this. He cannot do other things, prayer, preach, hymn. Those were not the cup of tea of the partner, but he best suited to collect money at some religious gathering. For well he knew that when that song was sung, then might he preach, and all with polished tongue. And he knew better when he should sing this song, which the song of the offertory, and how he can make more money. And when the time came that when he should get started with his activity, he knew that time better, and then he would make the best possible sound that he could, because he earlier told us, Geoffrey Chaucer, that he bleated like a goat. But when he would sing that song, he would make sure that he does not bleat like goat, to win some silver, as he right well could. Therefore he sang so merrily and so loud. So what he did most probably during these meetings, that he would sing very loudly. Why would he sing very loudly? So that he can earn enough gold or enough silver, enough money. That was the portrait of the partner. Now, few things that we know from this portrait of the partner is that there are too many suggestions of the sexuality of the partner, and it is implied quite a number of times that he may have been a gay, and he must have that sexual relationships with Samana, and he is also described as the friend of Samana. He is corrupt, he is devilish, he is bad looking man, he is bad looking person. So he is much like Miller, Manciple, Reeve and Samana, but he is very unlike the knight, and unlike the clerk, and unlike the parson, and unlike the plowman. And secondly, his character is also not good. Being one from the church, he is not well learned. For that matter, I would rather say that he is not having a lot of knowledge of the Bible, but what he carries with himself are few relics, and it is based on these relics that he would earn a lot of profit. So which also gives suggestion that when Geoffrey Chaucer tells us about the partner, he is also telling us a lot about the medieval society, where an ignorant fool, an ignorant partner can make the monkey of the whole society. Because if he earns only because of the relics and not of the knowledge, which means that he is a partner of the fools. The whole society is foolish, and that is the truth. And it is not a truth only of the Chaucer's time, it's a truth also of our contemporary times. Even there are many clerics in the modern time, many clergymen, many religious men, who know nothing of the religion, but then they make the best business out of the religion. And in the context of India, we have good number of examples that we can cite or we can quote. So this partner is much like that. So besides making a satirical account or satirical attack on the ways of the partner, Geoffrey Chaucer is also satirizing the ignorance of the common man of medieval time, or lack of intellectualness or lack of religious understanding in the people. So that was the portrait of the partner. And with this we come to the end of a long series of lectures which were 29 in number, and we have dealt with each and every portrait from the general prologue. And if you want to watch any of the portraits from the general prologue, you can check out this link. It would take you to the playlist section of the general prologue. Now we are left with three parts or three aspects of this general prologue, and it would be host, about host, or an address by the host, and then there would be first there would be an apology by the poet, followed by the host, and then he would conclude this prologue. But what I have thought is that I would not deal in detail with these three parts, these three concluding parts. Rather, I would just summarize the apology, the host, and the conclusion of the general prologue for you in the next lecture. So keep watching Your Academy. To watch the concluding part of the prologue, you can click here on this end screen. You can click here to subscribe Your Academy for more interesting stuff. Keep watching Your Academy. Don't forget to share, like, comment, and subscribe Your Academy for more interesting stuff. Keep watching Your Academy.